I grew up in a home where there was a lot of anger, right? It was probably our number one emotion that we had.
Right.
You know, it was just farm to table there. It was like it was 100% grass fed anger.
All right.
You know, and it was just the only way that we communicated. How much of a responsibility is it of parents to like teach kids what their feelings are?
Right. Yeah. I love this. So real quick, when you say there was a lot of anger, was it mostly like outward expressed, like yelling, screaming, stuff like
mostly yelling, screaming, throwing things,
right.
Judgment.
Okay.
Those are like the main emotions, you know, and then humor.
Okay. Nice.
So, but otherwise it was just always, you knew somebody was going to be angry.
Where were you in the birth order?
I was number 2. I have an older brother and 2 sisters.
Okay, and the sisters are both younger than you?
Yep, they're both younger, and everybody's alive still, pretty much.
Okay, pretty much. That's
good.
I
mean, some people are, you know.
Got it.
They're willing to risk it all, you know, but some of us are doing our best. So, but so that's where we at, and that it was just there was a lot of anger in there.
You know, I think that my feeling is with kids in particular. I mean, we can think about this from I'll start with what I consider to be sort of the golden rule of emotion and parenting, and that is that kids tend to express emotions the way their caregivers did. And so they tend to, and it's rooted in like age-old psychology that's called modeling, right? And so kids tend to model what their parents did. That if mom or dad yell and scream, kids tend to yell and scream as a way of dealing with emotions. And now there's some caveats to that, because simultaneously the other side is that, you know, kids sometimes get rewarded or punished for emotional expressions of particular types, right? So a kid hits somebody and they get punished for it. Now, oddly enough, sometimes they get punished for it by getting hit by the parent, right? Getting spanked or whatever.
Right. That's kind of wild when you think about it like that.
Right. And so, or they get in trouble for yelling by being yelled at. You know, so like there's all sorts of mixed messages there.
Damn.
But to me, I mean, some of the healthiest things you can do with kids when you're trying to raise emotionally wise children is to talk about feelings often, to give them the language to have that conversation, to help them identify what they're feeling.
Yeah.
I think that's a big problem for a lot of people, for a lot of kids, and it continues, is they don't know the difference between anger and sadness. They don't know the difference between fear and anger.
Oh, yeah. I would just start vibe, you know.
Yeah.
Every night you see that kid, he's just vibrating. You don't know what's going on. You got to show him a flashcard or something, you know.
Yeah. And
say that's joy, that's anger, because you don't know.
Right. And so helping kids one of the things I like to do with my kids and liked when they were young is to like unpack those emotional experiences with them, and not just their own, but when they see a kid, you know, melting down, or a kid getting angry or sad or scared or whatever, to say, so what do you think's going on? Like where did that come from? Why, you know, if we're watching TV and a kid react some way.
Just so at least that they can have in their own head. Like, okay, this is what happens when this happens. This is what I look like when it happens. This is where I can start to see in somebody else what's going on, and then you'll recognize it in yourself, and at least have some sort of, you'll be the conductor in some way as much as you can. Of maybe some of the outcomes, if not some of the origins of the feeling. Yeah, and then you can even talk through, you know, what are some options for them now, right? You know, this kid's just had this, just is feeling really hurt. What can he or she do to deal with those feelings of hurt? And I mean, I think those are like good, healthy ways. But I think it starts with wanting to make sure people are having those conversations, that people are really understanding it. Because part of what happens too is that people can realize that, you know, we like to believe, and I've even been saying, you know, look, your feelings are one of the ways your brain tells you what's going on, what you're experiencing. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're rooted in logic or reality, or that they're even really valid, right? We can be angry over a misunderstanding. We can be scared over something that's not really dangerous. And
the feelings are real, right? And we shouldn't minimize that, but we should take some time to like unpack them and talk about like what's going on. Why are you feeling this way?
I think that kind of stuff is important, at least because I think for myself, a long time, I didn't know a lot of feelings I was even having. I didn't know. I only knew a couple. Like I remember like certain things would go on and I wouldn't really have any feelings about it. And I was like, man, I never really had a lot of feelings. So I think sometimes talking with your kids like, oh, this is a feeling. That's what that is. Yeah. This is what's going on. Because otherwise you can just think you're bonkers as a child, you know? Like if somebody doesn't tell you kind of what's happening with you.
Well, a lot of times kids aren't really allowed to have feelings, right? I mean, that they're shamed for them. Yeah. That the message is, hey, hold that in. Don't let people see that. And then, I mean, of course, that's going to continue into adulthood, where they don't feel like they're allowed. They don't feel like it's safe to express that stuff.
I was thinking, if you allow your kids, right, like space to feel their feelings, okay, does that create in them, like, recognize they're feeling something, allow them a little space to feel it, right? Yeah, does that create like more of like an emotional resilience in them, which would just then when they're angry again, it would just kind of become another emotion to them, sort of like, does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you really want.
So then in the future they could cope better. So if it happens to them next time, it'd be like, okay.
Yep. Because what you really want is, I mean, you want a situation where your kids can, when they're feeling something, A, know what they're feeling, B, have a sense for where it's coming from, understand like its root causes, be able to critically evaluate those root causes, and then know what to do with it, right? And I mean, and that's a level of sophistication that I don't think, frankly, most people are capable of. But it's because we haven't given them the space or the tools to do that over their lifetime. And I think we're way better at this as a society now than we were when you and I were kids, right? Yeah. Like we're way better at trying to provide those tools to kids, but it comes with them. It comes with people being able to have those conversations to say, hey, let's talk about what you're feeling right now. Not in a like necessarily a judgment or punishy way. Like, hey, you just got real mad. You hit your brother. Let's have a conversation about that. Let's talk about better ways to handle that. Let's make sure we make up for what we did. So it's not like it's consequence free. People oftentimes accuse me of being sort of wimpy and like, hey, you're letting your kids walk all over you. They got to get punished or whatever. It's not that it's consequence free. It's like, no, we're gonna deal with those feelings and try and figure out sort of the best way to handle it. And yeah, that helps them develop that emotional resilience going forward.
Yeah, at least having some emotional understanding of yourself.
Yep.
But how do you then like put the cap on it where you're like, yeah, it's okay if my kid is angry, we're like, how do we not turn into one of these societies where it's just like, oh, I don't feel like going to work today, so I'm not going to go.
Yeah.
That's... Nobody ever feels like going to work. That's the first thing it should tell you when you ever go to school.
Yeah.
One day you're going to go to work and nobody's going to feel like it. That should be the first thing that they teach us.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's true. Like the message also has to be that your emotions alone aren't necessarily reason not to do something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I have two kids. Both of them are very, very awesome in different ways. But the one is he's a performer. He's a dancer, and he's in a lot of musicals and things like that. And one of the things that I can say about him is people often talk about how brave he is, and he is. But I know him well enough to know that he gets real anxious about performing in those things. He's feeling that fear. It's not that he's not scared, it's that he knows how to do things anyways. And that's where you want people to get. Like, you want people to get to a point of, right now, you know what, I'm feeling sad and I don't feel like being able to go, I don't feel like going to work, but I also need to do it. I understand what my responsibilities are, and I can work through that. And I think like there's something to be said for to me, that's a big part of what emotional resilience is. It's being able to feel things and then overcome those feelings at times.
Right. And I think if you give your kids space for that, it feels like you're that's a armor you can create in them as well.
Yep.
It's like, hey, you feel sad right now, or you feel a little disappointed. This is how you can manage that right now. And look, 5 minutes later, wow, look, we're right back to where we were before. Everything's good. So then when they have those things happen in their own lives, when you're not around, they're going to have like some sort of, even if it's just brief little check-ins from a parent are huge.
Well, that's the thing. And this isn't just about parenting. This is about being a supervisor. It's about being a human being. You can be sensitive and have expectations.
Yeah.
Right? You can be sensitive to your kids' emotional needs and have things you expect them to do. You can be sensitive to your employees and have expectations of them.
Right.
And frankly, you can be sensitive to yourself, and you can be sort of patient and caring with yourself and still have expectations for what you want to accomplish. Yeah. When it comes to kids, one of probably the most important things to do is help them develop the tools that allow them to sort of find ways to decrease their anger in the moment, right? And that's oftentimes for kids going to be deep breathing. It's going to be distraction is actually a really good one. So find something else you can do for a little while. Maybe we talked about drawing earlier. Maybe it's playing with Legos. Maybe it's petting your dog, whatever. Things like that allow you to sort of de-escalate.
Yeah.
The other side of it is, helping kids identify where they have some control. And this is harder with kids because I think they have a little less control in their day-to-day life. Where can kids have control in their surroundings and their environment? How can they sort of do less of the things that provoke that might provoke anger? Right. My other son is a diehard basketball fan, and he's a player and fan, and so we've been watching the NBA quite a bit. I'm from Minnesota originally, so
so you guys are in, huh?
Yeah, so we're Timberwolves fans, but and he handles, they won last night. That was great, but they've been, they're down a couple games.
3-1, yeah,
yeah, and he handles it well, but it takes a toll on him. Like he gets sad. He's 12 years old. He gets sad when they lose, and so that's the kind of thing that like over time. You want to think about what kind of impact that's having. You want to think about how much it's influencing you. You want to think about whether or not it's
as a parent,
you.
you mean?
Yeah.
Like a kid doing something, if it's something that like what they're absorbing, you mean?
Yeah. As a parent, you want them to be thinking about how much time they're spending on this thing that ends up taking an emotional toll on them.
Got it.
Yeah.
Is it good to let your children feel anger?
I think so. I think like anything, up to a point, I think it's good to let them, because that's how they're going to deal with I think the art of dealing with emotions is I liken it to exercise. I saw a post of yours working out the other day, right? You're on a run or something like that.
Oh, yeah. I like to run.
Yeah, me too. Every day.
You do?
I do, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I think it's great for my mental health, great for everything. But the thing about I think it's similar. Dealing with emotions is similar to exercise in that, when you exercise, you push yourself to a place of discomfort, but never so uncomfortable that it's actually harmful, right? Mm-hmm. And I think you can do the same thing with emotions. You can push yourself into a zone where this emotion is uncomfortable for me, but it's not so uncomfortable that I'm suffering, right? And so it's like I want to feel some fear because I want to get used to dealing with that discomfort. And I want to sort of learn to cope with it, but I don't want to feel so much fear that I'm like on the floor shaking or anything like that.
Yeah.
And with kids, I want them to feel some anxiety and learn that they can just do the thing anyways.
Yeah.
I want them to feel some fear, some anger, and learn that they can do the thing anyways, and work through it. That's a good, healthy way to be.
Yeah, it's just interesting when you think about like that it's a parent's responsibility to do all of that,
right?
Like how many little things that they learn because of how the parents let them absorb it,
and that's I think one of the challenges is I imagine that our parents' age didn't it wasn't on their radar to be thinking about stuff like this.
No,
that they just didn't know, and so they weren't necessarily attuned to like what kids might need or benefit from an emotional perspective.
Yeah, it was a different time.